we have Philip Martin with us. Really interesting background as well as like current occupation. Philip, do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Sure, I'll do a quick intro. So, hi everybody. I'm Philip Martin. I'm the Chief Security Officer at Coinbase, where I've been for the past 9 years. And prior to that, I was at Palantir for about 5. I was at Amazon for a while. I spent about a decade in the U.S. Army, focused on counterintelligence. And so I've done a bunch of stuff all over the world. Really enjoy being at a place like Coinbase in particular. I'm other places too in my career where it's like very high threat, very focused adversaries, willing to spend a lot of money, time, and effort to get into it over a long period of time. That's to me, that's where the fun is.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. And I think you kind of hit on the thing when I was thinking about like, having you here in the discussion, you kind of hit the nail in the head of what I thought like, hey, here's the real like big unique part of this is you've worked in several places, but I would expect, and maybe I'm just not seeing it right, but like that Coinbase would probably be like really on the tip of the spear here of a lot of like this high threat environment. Is that true, or is that actually on par to a lot of other places?
It's interesting. So Coinbase has a different piece of the threat spectrum than a lot of orgs do. So the like at Palantir, for example, I used to say we have sort of like the far left and the far right of the threat spectrum, right? We have internet activist lulzsec and friends who dislike the fact that Palantir is doing work with the government, and then we have like legitimate nation state adversaries, right? Who want to use Palantir as a stepping stone into customers or other environments. But we didn't really have the middle, right? Like the transnational criminal organizations, the sort of hacking collectives that are financially focused. We didn't really have that. Coinbase has almost exclusively that, right? Is that financially focused actor segment. The people who attack Coinbase generally want dollars, um, right? And they want dollars, and they're not generally like fussed about where those dollars come from, right? So Coinbase, in many ways, is sort of an environment where the attackers are very economically sensitive and motivated, right? So they want to steal a dollar. Like, okay, so what's their marginal cost for stealing that dollar? How much does it cost them to steal a dollar? And the trite but true saying is attackers have bosses and budgets too, right? Where are they going to put their dollars to steal that dollar? So it's a very marked dynamic that we see in crypto. Now that's not true across the board, and Coinbase has enough dollars that people are willing to spend a fair bit on the chance that they can sort of try to steal it. But that's more true than not for most organizations.
I thank you. That's interesting. I saw a comment. It's also the thing that popped in my mind when you were kind of talking about that spectrum is, and then like kind of throughout that spectrum is North Korea somewhere that is kind of both
Well,
on
so
one
they're sort of a
end.
weird, like they're like some sort of amorphous blob on that spectrum somewhere, right? That I think about them more as a criminal gang than I do as a true nation state.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. So okay, that's like that's good. That's kind of like the shape of the threats that you guys look at. How does that translate if we kind of like go one layer down? Like how does that translate into how you think about defending an organization like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to oversimplify this because it's how do you defend an organization like Coinbase? I could absolutely give a lecture for probably an entire semester on that topic, right? But one version of that is you focus on the economics, right? How do you make it so that the cost to attack you is high enough relative to your peer set that you are the least attractive target in the target set? That's one way That's not obviously the entirety of how to think about this problem. But because we're in a place where we're sort of we have a almost entirely economically motivated attacker set. Um, the fix for how do you make them go away is, well, you make it cheaper to attack somebody else versus you. And there's a bunch of ways to do that, right? Like an example here is, this was years ago. We did a whole series of blogs on this, so there's nothing non-public here. But we had a very cool, very high-end attack. This was back 2019, maybe 20. Yeah, let's call it 19. Very cool, very high-end attack targeting Coinbase. Right, these guys found or chained together two O-days to do a full remote zero-click RCE in Firefox. They had compromised a university in England in order to send phishing to us and host some of the exploit sites. They had created complete fake personas to send the phishing from. Incredibly sophisticated long term. They probably took, they probably took months from, like, if you count from the beginning of the kill chain, the discovery of the O-Day and all that stuff, right? But very high end attack. And so we caught it. Great, lovely for us. After we caught it, we could have done a bunch of things, right? We could have just shut it down for us and like move on with our lives. Great. We obviously disclosed the O-Day to the Firefox folk. We were able to capture that, just give it to them. They fixed it super fast. Like, huge kudos to that team. I think it was like they had a fix out within a week, certainly, if I recall correctly, possibly within days. But what we instead did is we published the entire thing in a blog post, right? And the reason we published it in a blog post is because we could then burn that attacker's TTPs. The fact of an O-Day is out there, how they structured it, the kind of emails they sent, their infrastructure, the IP ranges, where they came from, all of that stuff. We burned all of it, right? Because I make no money off of this. I'm not Mandiant. I'm not, CrowdStrike. I don't have a threat intelligence function that sells to people. But what I can do is say to attackers, look, like, fair play. You're out there. You want to come attack us? Great. I can't make you not attack us, but if I catch you, I'm going to burn all of it, right? And you're going to have to start again from scratch, which sucks.
Yeah, I like it. It's kind of extending the when we talk about TTPs, very often we focus purely on the low level technical stuff. But I guess in very sophisticated operations like that, I mean, yes, very impressive at the technical level, but it's almost the like the operational level that is
Mhm.
probably where the most effort was spent.
I am positive it was, right? Setting up the infrastructure, the honeypots, like all of it. That must have taken someone so much time and effort.
Yeah,
Not to mention the O-Day, which was either they spent months finding or spent millions of dollars buying.
right. Yeah, and I find it fascinating that it's described like that. It is similar to like in the intelligence community, right? Like if you're
Mhm.
looking at like espionage, where it's like computer network exploitation, where like yeah, the O-Day is important, but it's kind of everything that goes around it that
Right.
like as we've seen in a couple of cases, if you burn that, that has decades long repercussions on the whole
Yep.
program.
Absolutely. And that was really the thought process behind this, right? Is it's economics, right? I'm gonna cost them more money than they're gonna go somewhere else next time.
Yeah. And it makes sense that you'd be able to, more so than probably like the average, I don't know, like life insurance company or something like that, really be able to hone in on like this is the spot where we can optimize the hell out of it. Um,
Yep, for sure.
oh. Do you? So I saw somebody asking a question, and like I have to say, this is out of my depth, right? So this is a naive. You're getting the naive version of this, but somebody was asking, like, hey, is there also like a threat landscape, sort of not at the IT level, which we've kind of been discussing, but at the actual kind of crypto level? So they're mentioning like the contracts and
Mhm.
poisoning like various contracts and nodes, and like I know just enough to be dangerous there, but I'm curious. I'm sure you have a much better handle.
Yeah, sure. Like, absolutely. Right. Like I talk a lot. both internally and externally about like smart contract security, and I think about it as sort of trying to write, like, imagine you were a developer from the 1980s and you wrote C code, and somebody grabbed you through time, pulled you into 2025, and said, "Okay, great, write some secure C code." Right? They would fail. They would fail spectacularly because there are entire classes of attacks that have been invented since the time they learned to write C until now. There's a whole set of tooling and tool chains that they wouldn't know how to use. That they would be operating with not just a hand, probably both hands and a leg tied behind their back. Right. Writing smart contract code is not dissimilar today. The tool chain is not mature, right? The sort of the security tool chain, I should say. But I mean, even sort of the DevOps tool chain has a lot of growth to do, in my opinion. Security tool chain isn't mature. Attackers are actively innovating in this space and doing so aggressively and finding new ways to attack these smart contracts. Smart contracts themselves are frequently not standalone, right? They call on other smart contracts in sort of an ecosystem of, of software all on chain. But those smart contracts can also be updated, right? There are various update patterns, right, that you can use to make a smart contract, which otherwise is immutable, updatable. Um, and so for a software author, that's such a hard set of constraints to work within, and ship something that's secure, not just on day one, but also on day, 101 and 1001, when your dependencies might dynamically update on you without you knowing, or even the underlying blockchain itself, right? Ethereum might get an update to add new features that create vulnerabilities in the code that you've written, right? So it's just a very, very hard ecosystem to protect as a smart contract author. And I think we've seen certainly interesting attacks at the blockchain layer. Frankly, we see way more, way more at the traditional sort of network endpoint human layer than we see like pure blockchain style attacks. But I think it's on the rise as more attackers get more conversant in that layer and sort of better understand the ecosystem.
Interesting. I gotta say, you shattered one of my assumptions and makes me sad. Like you said, we can update the contract. I thought the whole point of the blockchain in those contracts is that it's immutable.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it feels, I think that's kind of the comparison we're making, but it also feels a little bit like, the whole microsystems, microservices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the interaction with so many different components just makes the whole attack surface explode.
And that's the right way to think about it, is dealing with a microservices architecture where the microservices are written by different companies, right? With like without necessarily any roadmap coordination or clarity there. So it's a very complicated environment.
Oh, no, that's scary. That's scary. Um, so I feel like the blockchain side of thing could be, like you were saying, a whole other week of
Oh yeah, for
lecture.
sure.
On the traditional, which sounds like it's the big side, like of that equation as well. What are the things that are the most difficult, you think, for you? You are, obviously we don't want to go into like details that shouldn't be shared, but like, that you see in your landscape, like what are the big challenges?
It's always humans. I would argue, if anyone ever at any company tells you anything else, they're fooling themselves, right? Like the humans are always the hard part. And yes, we can have a discussion about secure by defaults, about secure design, about all of those things. And what I have discovered over my career is we should never underestimate the ingenuity of people who want to get their work done. Right? They will find whatever the gaps, holes, edge cases are, and like, look, they're doing it out of all the right intentions, right? To get done with something they think they need to get done. But there's no such thing as a perfect system, and attackers know that too, right? And so they push to exploit not just those technical gaps, but also those people gaps, those knowledge gaps, those experience gaps, in order to get folks to do what they want them to do to get to wherever they want to get to, right? Like, um, At the end of the day, I very firmly believe security is a people and behavior problem more than it is a technical problem.
Interesting. So if that's the case, what kind of solution, like what kind of solutions or processes or systems have you put in place, or that you felt has actually had like a good impact on that side of things? Because I know
Yeah.
like people think like, hey, there's training, there's phishing testing. Is there other things that actually have had a big impact for you?
And so I don't actually think training and phishing testing have that much of an impact. Um, I think they train people. It's like, and please don't take this the wrong way. It's like training a puppy, right? Like, really an interesting thing about training a puppy is when you're training it to do something, it's very hard to know, oh, did I train that dog to sit when I told it sit? Or did I train that dog to sit when it experienced some other stimulus that I didn't even know that dog was experiencing, but happened to happen every time I got it to sit, right? Like, um, it fishing training trains people to find fishing. That we know that, like I can say that with a high degree of confidence. It doesn't necessarily mean it trains them to find actual fishing, right? Same thing with security training, annual security awareness training, that kind of stuff, right? It even assuming the best outcome, it trains them on the specific things you're talking about, not necessarily the broader concepts and generalities, which are nuanced and evolve. And so those things are important. And in fact, for many regulations required, right? But I don't think they actually move the needle that much. I think what moves the needle is in my experience is really two broad things. Um, Deploying systems that make it um, impossible for users to take actions. So I'll give you examples. We require hardware keys, UB keys for us in particular, for all employee authentication. It's not an option for them to use a push or a tap or anything else. They have to use a UB key. That closes off a ton of vectors that attackers could use the whole force push thing, right, where they push 1,000 times to someone's phone, eventually they're going to tap yes, stuff like that, right? It just all goes away. We are really big into consensus controls for sensitive actions, right? So it's not just one person that says, hey, we have to, I'm gonna make up an example. Hey, we have to create this account for some internal user. Okay, that's not just like, IT worker Bob creating the account. That's some level of like people coming together and looking at like, that makes sense? That makes sense. Okay, great. We're all going to click yes together, right? Making it harder for an attacker to, either through social engineering or through sort of technical compromise. Actually, no, the better example is we require consensus for code push. So you write code within Coinbase, you're doing your thing, you open up a pull request after you've pushed your code. Before that pull request gets merged to master, other people need to review it and plus one it, and not just plus one it, but they need to two-factor auth or GPG sign their approval of that merge. And the number of required reviewers goes up with the sensitivity of the code repo, right? So we might have like, all you need is a plus one on something that's less sensitive. Something much more sensitive might need plus four, plus five, right? With that out of band 2FA method, right? So it's actually not possible for an attacker to pop onto a laptop on Coinbase and push code. It's not technically possible for that to happen. And it's not possible for someone, for a malicious insider to do it by themselves. They would need to suborn or fool or whatever some number of other people in order to get that code through. So things like that, where the user just can't do something, is much more impactful.
I really like that. It reminds me of we all get kind of little tidbits of lessons throughout our career, right, from different places, and one of those was from back in my days at Google, looking at a completely different area, but it was around the access control list for network devices. And I suspect, it's a very common challenge in like big organizations, but there is a challenge around knowing what actual ACLs are deployed where on which
Mhm.
devices, right? If you have like dozens of campuses, like this gets really problematic, and you just needed one, sysadmin to go and push a thing somewhere. And now, yeah, you have a repo of the thing, but it's not actual reality.
Right.
And he had that manager had echoed exactly what you're saying, which is, look, the move we're going to do is that it is impossible for anybody to push any ACL. The only way that there will be like a trust, like a trust path, is from a CI/CD process within the repos, and that is at the end of the day the only way to ensure that those things don't happen. And it forces you to have the incentive to try to make it low friction while maintaining that security. But at least you're not trying to retroactively deal with, well, somebody added this user, I need to
Right.
detect that maybe it was a bad user. No, no, no. It's just like it's from the get-go. It's a trust path.
Exactly right, right, and that kind of thing, like we also use Terraform as for infrastructure as code. There's no such thing as someone doing something by hand. It all goes into a code repo, and it's subject to the same controls, and that sort of like um, trusted path for changes or updates or whatever. So important.
Hmm. And is there, like, to kind of get the mirror of like, this is a philosophy. I classify it as a philosophy, but the types of things that you're doing today, is there things that you're looking forward and you say, we would love to do these types of things or leverage this new type of technology, or change, something towards the future?
That's a great question. Like we always look at how do we get faster and more efficient in finding bad, right? So areas where we can't through technical controls prevent bad, like how do we find it faster, better, more efficiently? I think there's a bunch of answers there. One, I mean, I'm not like a guy who's super excited about the rise of AI. I think we're just not there yet broadly. Like at best, it should be a human in the loop tool, not an automated action tool. But pieces of it I think are interesting, to better inform SOC or CSER analysts to do a better job processing, summarizing large amounts of data, stuff like that. That like can make the detection response path faster. Um, I think I'm really into trusted computing as a concept, although all of the attempts at it have largely just spectacularly failed. Um, but I think like the concept of it, the ability to run um, code in a separated, isolated, protective enclave that can, either run sensitive operations away from the main system or observe the main system from a protected perch. Like that's a really interesting field to me, and I think could be really additive to a lot of what we build today in security infrastructure. But like, it's just not. We've just not gotten there yet, sadly. But I'm hopeful one day. Um, what else am I really excited about for the future? Off offhand, I do. Let's see. I don't know. That's it off the top of my head right now.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah. The trusted computing thing is, it feels like it's a concept that lives very, very far away from where we are, and we're kind of adding one stone every year in that
Yeah.
direction. Other than platforms like iOS, things like that have kind of made a big jump, and I think the rest of the industry is kind of slowly catching up. Um,
Yeah, but like iOS is great and all, but they have a simplified problem of only like um, those workloads are only ever signed by Apple, right? Like they don't have to worry about third-party secure enclave workloads that might be doing other things and like attacking the model from the inside. The- and kudos to them, right? But they simplified the model enough where they seem to be able to do it relatively successfully.
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm curious to see how the world, evolves, like I'm wondering in 5, 10 years, are we going to see just a lot more of those types of platforms for everybody except backend developers and cloud companies kind of thing?
I hope so. I really do. I think it could materially change this sort of the ecosystem of security.
Agreed. Cool. Well, we're getting close to the end here. Is there any other like topic or thoughts that you wanted to share, or hot takes, or anything like that?
I don't know if I have hot takes per se. Not in general, not a fan of hot takes because whatever else there are, they're almost certainly wrong. Um, they're just fast. What else? I mean, the other topic area that I think about a lot is supply chain attacks, um, and especially in the open source software supply chain, which just seems to be an intractable problem. The way things are right now, and we spend a lot of time thinking about how we build things defensively, assuming supply chain compromise. But man, that's a deep and long topic.
And it's getting worse, I would argue, and not better. Which
Yeah, I
is
mean, we just saw the what is it that GitHub Action compromise, which I mean this is public, which was first used to target us before the attacker did that. We saw it, responded to it, then said, "Well, heck, I guess we just target everybody now." But yeah,
yeah, that's brutal. That's from a reliability perspective, from a security perspective. Yeah, that would make another week-long
oh yeah,
discussion.
sure.
Well, thank you very much for coming in, having that chat. That was super cool, super interesting. I think it's obviously, to state the obvious, but like you live day to day in a pretty interesting environment. So it's not every day we could get to hear about that. So thank you
Yeah,
very
it's
much.
a lot of fun. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thanks everybody. And yeah, we have our community.limacharlie.io. If you want to, keep the discussion going, anything like that, or come in next week again and different topic. Thank you.